If you feel like no one understands you, listen to this story. In the heart of a sprawling ancient forest, where the trees whispered secrets to the wind and the moonlight painted silver patterns on the ground, lived Bella, a young owl with feathers as soft as silk and eyes as wide as the night sky. Bella's beauty was the talk of the woodland creatures, but she longed to be known for more than just her appearance. She often perched high in the tallest oak tree, gazing at the stars, yearning for wisdom she felt she didn't yet possess. Bella's home was a majestic hollow in the same ancient oak, a vantage point that allowed her to observe the vibrant life of the forest. From her perch, she watched the squirrels darting between branches, the foxes padding silently through the underbrush, and the rabbits hopping nervously at the edges of moonlit clearings. Every creature seemed to know its place and purpose, yet Bella felt lost. Despite her sharp eyes and natural grace, she doubted her own abilities and questioned her role in the grand tapestry of forest life. The older owls in her community were revered as symbols of wisdom, their words carrying weight in every decision. Bella admired them deeply, but couldn't shake the nagging thought that she would never match their insights or experience. "Wisdom is a gift of time," one elder had once said, and Bella feared she would have to wait years, perhaps a lifetime, to be truly wise. But the younger animals saw Bella differently. To them, she was a beacon of guidance, her high perch making her seem all-knowing. They would often approach her for advice, asking questions about how to find food, where to hide from predators, or how to navigate disputes. Bella would try her best to help, but each answer left her second-guessing herself. What if I lead them astray, she wondered. Her anxiety grew with every interaction, leading her to avoid others whenever possible. The seasons passed, and Bella's insecurities deepened. Spring brought the chatter of young animals eager to learn. Summer brought bustling activity as creatures prepared for leaner times. Autumn leaves whispered of change, and winter's silence pressed heavily on Bella's heart. Through it all, she perched quietly, an observer of life, but never quite a participant. Still, the forest thrummed with energy and connection, and Bella couldn't entirely resist its call. Occasionally, she joined gatherings under the moonlight, where animals shared stories and laughter. Yet even in these moments, Bella felt like an outsider, her doubts clouding her enjoyment. If only I were wiser, she thought, then they would truly respect me. Little did Bella know that a single storm was about to sweep through the forest, not just uprooting trees and reshaping the land, but also setting her on a path toward discovering the wisdom she sought so desperately. As the days unfolded, Bella's sense of inadequacy grew like a shadow that stretched with each passing moment. Her perch in the ancient oak tree, once a source of solace, began to feel like a cage. From this height, she observed the lives of the forest's inhabitants, squirrels scurrying to store acorns, deer grazing peacefully, and foxes darting through the underbrush. Each creature seemed confident in its purpose, a stark contrast to Bella's growing self-doubt. Word had spread among the younger animals that Bella, with her keen eyes and elevated view of the forest, was someone to seek out for guidance. While the elders shared their wisdom sparingly, Bella's presence felt approachable to the timid and inexperienced. It wasn't long before animals began gathering at the base of her tree, calling out for advice. "Bella, how do we find the best berries before the frost sets in?" asked a hedgehog, his small voice trembling with urgency. "Bella, where should I hide my nuts so no one steals them?" a frantic squirrel chirped. Even a young rabbit with twitching ears hopped forward one night, asking, "How can I be braver when crossing open fields?" Bella wanted to help, but every question tightened the knot in her chest. Her answers, though thoughtful, felt inadequate. "What if I'm wrong?" she would think as she guided them. "What if I lead them into danger?" Each interaction drained her confidence further. The pressure only increased as the forest's elders began to notice. During a moonlit council, an older owl named Alric addressed Bella. His voice carried the weight of years, each word deliberate. "Young Bella," he said, his amber eyes locking onto hers, "it seems you've become a voice for the youth of this forest, a responsibility not to be taken lightly." Bella's feathers ruffled at his words. Was this meant as a compliment or a warning? Alric's gaze lingered, making her feel as though he could see straight into her doubts. Later that night, alone in her hollow, Bella replayed his words, a responsibility not to be taken lightly. The phrase echoed in her mind. She had never sought this role, yet it had found her. How could she carry such a burden when she barely trusted herself? As the seasons shifted, Bella's anxiety deepened. She began avoiding the younger animals, retreating further into her thoughts. Her hollow, once filled with the soft hoots of a curious owl, now stood silent. She watched the forest with the weight of expectations pressing down on her like the heavy branches of her oak during a storm. What Bella couldn't see from her perch was that a real storm was brewing, one that would soon test not just her resolve, but the very foundation of her beliefs. The winds of change were rising, and Bella, despite her doubts, would find herself at the center of it all. The night began as any other, with Bella perched high in her oak tree, scanning the forest below. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the land. But something felt different, an unsettling stillness. The usual chorus of nocturnal creatures was absent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the distant rumble of thunder. Bella's sharp eyes caught a flicker of light on the horizon, lightning, jagged and fierce, splitting the sky. The storm was coming, and it wasn't the usual gentle rain that refreshed the forest. This storm carried an energy that made the trees tremble. The first gusts of wind lashed through the forest, bending branches and scattering leaves. Bella's perch swayed precariously, and she dug her talons into the bark for stability. The storm's fury escalated, with rain hammering down in sheets and lightning illuminating the chaos below. Bella saw animals scurrying for shelter, rabbits diving into burrows, birds retreating to their nests, and deer huddling together under thick canopies. From her vantage point, Bella noticed something alarming. Many smaller creatures were struggling. A family of hedgehogs was caught in the open, their tiny forms barely visible as the rain soaked their spines. A young squirrel clung desperately to a thin branch that swayed violently in the wind. Bella's heart raced. She wanted to help, but fear rooted her to her perch. "What can I do?" she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "I'm not strong enough. I don't know enough." Her hesitation was interrupted by a loud crack. Bella turned just in time to see a tree nearby splinter and crash to the ground, sending a family of sparrows fluttering into the chaos. Panic surged through her as she realized the storm was relentless and indiscriminate. The forest she knew and loved was being torn apart before her eyes. As the rain intensified, Bella faced a choice: remain safe in her hollow or risk everything to help those in need. Her wings trembled as she spread them wide, testing the storm's strength. She could feel the wind's resistance, a force that seemed determined to keep her grounded, but something deep within her, an instinct she couldn't ignore, pushed her forward. With a deep breath, Bella launched into the storm. The wind screamed in her ears, and the rain battered her feathers, but she refused to turn back. She swooped low, guiding the hedgehog family toward a hollow log for shelter. She circled around to the struggling squirrel, encouraging him to leap to a sturdier branch. Each action tested her limits, but Bella found strength in the urgency of the moment. Her sharp eyes and quick thinking, the very traits she often doubted, became her greatest tools. For the first time, Bella acted without overthinking, trusting her instincts and abilities. By the time the storm began to subside, Bella was soaked and exhausted, her wings heavy with rain. Yet as she returned to her perch, she saw the forest with new eyes. The animals she had helped were safe, their gratitude visible even in their hurried movements. Bella realized that in the face of chaos, she had found a strength she didn't know she possessed. But as the first rays of dawn broke through the storm clouds, Bella also knew this was just the beginning of her journey. The storm had revealed her potential, but it had also left the forest in disarray, with challenges still ahead. The morning after the storm dawned with an eerie quiet. Rays of sunlight filtered through the broken canopy of the forest, illuminating the damage left in the storm's wake. Trees had been uprooted, their roots clawing at the sky, and the forest floor was littered with branches and leaves. Streams had overflowed, turning paths into muddy obstacles. Bella remained in her hollow for a long while, her wings still heavy from the night's efforts. Her body ached, but it was her mind that bore the greatest weight. She replayed the storm in vivid flashes, the panic in the animals' eyes, the roar of the wind, and her own frantic attempts to guide them. She couldn't deny the pride she felt in what she had done. The squirrel, the hedgehogs, and the sparrows had all found safety because of her actions, yet the doubts that had plagued her before the storm began to creep back in. Was it enough? Had she made the right decisions? Bella's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of movement below. Peering down from her perch, she saw a small group of animals gathered in the clearing. Among them were the squirrel and the hedgehog family she had helped. They were looking up at her with expressions of gratitude, their voices chirping out thanks. For a moment, Bella felt a warm glow of recognition. But then she noticed the broader devastation around them. Many animals had lost their homes, and the forest seemed far from its vibrant self. Bella wondered how she could possibly help restore it, when she still doubted her abilities. As she watched the animals begin to organize themselves, Bella realized she couldn't sit idle. Her heart told her to act, but her mind was filled with uncertainty. She decided to take flight, hoping that soaring over the forest would provide clarity. From above, the view was sobering. The once lush and orderly forest was now a chaotic patchwork of destruction. Bella saw animals wandering aimlessly, their homes destroyed. The young owl felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the task ahead. "Where do I even begin?" she murmured, landing on a broken branch that swayed under her weight. A voice answered from below, startling her. "You begin where you are needed most." It was Myrna, the old turtle known for her wisdom, slowly making her way through the debris. Bella looked down at her, surprised by the calm presence of the elder. "You've done more than you realize, Bella," Myrna continued, "but wisdom isn't about doing everything alone. It's about understanding that even small actions, when done with care, can ripple outward." Bella listened intently as Myrna's words sunk in. The turtle reminded her that wisdom wasn't about having all the answers. It was about embracing uncertainty and acting with intention. Bella reflected on her choices during the storm. Each decision had been made in the moment, guided by her instincts. Perhaps that was the essence of wisdom, trusting herself, even in the face of doubt. As Myrna shuffled away, Bella felt a shift within her. She understood that while she couldn't rebuild the forest alone, her efforts could inspire others. With renewed determination, she prepared herself for the challenges ahead, ready to guide not just with answers, but with example. The day unfolded with the forest still bearing the scars of the storm. Bella, now more resolved, soared above the trees, scanning for signs of where her help might be needed most. The once familiar landscape seemed foreign, with fallen branches creating barriers and the exposed roots of toppled trees resembling claws clutching the air. Yet, amidst the devastation, Bella saw movement, a reminder that life continued. As she circled, Bella's sharp eyes caught sight of an unusual glint near a clearing where the sunlight pierced through the canopy. Intrigued, she descended carefully, landing on a moss-covered rock. In the center of the clearing sat an older fox, his fur streaked with gray and his tail elegantly curled around his legs. Beside him, lay a collection of smooth, polished stones that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. The fox looked up as Bella landed, his amber eyes warm yet piercing. "Ah, the owl who braved the storm," he said in a voice that carried both age and wisdom. Bella tilted her head, curious. "How do you know about that?" The fox smiled knowingly. "Word travels quickly in the forest, especially when someone steps into a role they were destined for." His words caught Bella off guard. "Destined? I didn't feel destined. I just acted because there was no other choice." "That," the fox said, nudging one of the stones with his paw, "is often how wisdom begins, not with certainty, but with necessity. Tell me, young owl, what troubles you now?" Bella hesitated, but then spoke. "The storm has passed, but the forest is in chaos. I've helped some, but it doesn't feel like enough. I don't know how to fix everything, and I don't even know if I'm doing the right thing." The fox nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Let me tell you a story," he began. "Long ago, a river once flowed through this very clearing. It nourished the land and sustained the creatures here. But one harsh summer, the river dried up. The animals despaired, for they didn't know how to bring it back. Then one small bird began carrying droplets of water in its beak from a distant spring. Alone it couldn't fill the riverbed, but its efforts inspired others. Soon, the entire forest worked together, each contributing what they could, until the river flowed again." Bella listened intently, her feathers ruffling as a gentle breeze passed through the clearing. "But what if no one helps?" she asked softly. The fox's gaze softened. "Leadership doesn't always mean giving orders. Sometimes it means showing others what's possible. Your actions have already sparked something in the forest. The question is, will you trust yourself enough to continue?" The fox then rose and began walking away, his tail swishing behind him. Before disappearing into the shadows, he turned back and said, "Remember, the ripple begins with a single drop." Bella remained in the clearing for a long moment, the fox's words echoing in her mind. She realized that her doubts were natural, but they didn't define her. What mattered were her actions and the intentions behind them. With renewed purpose, Bella took to the skies once more. She resolved to act not with the pressure of solving every problem, but with the belief that her small efforts, like the droplets of water, could inspire others to join in rebuilding their shared home. With the fox's story fresh in her mind, Bella felt a newfound clarity. The enormity of the forest's recovery no longer seemed as paralyzing. Instead, she focused on small, deliberate actions, trusting that each step would contribute to a greater whole. Her first destination was a grove near the riverbank, where several animals had gathered in confusion. The storm had uprooted trees and sent debris tumbling into the water, leaving the river clogged and the nearby ground waterlogged. Rabbits hesitated at the edges of the mess, unsure of where to begin, while a family of ducks quacked nervously, their pond now a muddy pool. Bella landed gracefully on a fallen branch, her presence drawing the attention of the crowd. "We can fix this together," she said, her voice steady despite the fluttering of her heart. "Let's start by clearing the debris from the water." The animals exchanged uncertain glances, but Bella's calm confidence sparked a ripple of action. A young deer stepped forward, using its strong legs to nudge branches away from the riverbank. The ducks followed, diving into the water to retrieve smaller twigs, while the rabbits began clearing mud and leaves. Bella coordinated their efforts from above, guiding them to areas most in need of attention. By the time the sun began to set, the river flowed more freely, its gentle babble returning life to the grove. The animals, though exhausted, looked at one another with a sense of accomplishment. Bella saw it too, a spark of unity, the beginning of something greater. Encouraged by this success, Bella moved to other parts of the forest, where animals faced their own challenges. In one area, she helped a family of mice rebuild their nest using fallen leaves and feathers. In another, she guided a group of squirrels to gather food from branches that had been scattered by the wind. Each effort, no matter how small, seemed to awaken something in the animals. They began to take initiative, forming groups to repair burrows, gather food, and clear pathways. Bella noticed that her role had shifted from leading every action to inspiring others to lead themselves. One evening, as Bella perched on a tall pine tree to rest, she gazed at the forest below. The once chaotic scene now showed signs of recovery. Shelters were being rebuilt, and the air was filled with the chatter of animals working together. For the first time in a long while, Bella felt a sense of peace. Her transformation had been gradual but profound. The doubts that once weighed her down had not disappeared entirely, but they no longer controlled her. She had learned to act despite uncertainty, to trust her instincts and the collective strength of the forest. As the moon rose, its silvery light casting a serene glow over the land, Bella reflected on how far she had come. The storm had been a trial, but it had also been a gift, forcing her to confront her fears and discover the wisdom that lay dormant within her. The forest still had a long way to go, but Bella knew they would rebuild it together. Her wings felt lighter, her purpose clearer, and her heart steadier. The journey of transformation was far from over, but Bella had embraced it fully, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Weeks turned into months, and the forest began to thrive once more. Where devastation had once reigned, new growth now blossomed. Saplings sprouted from the earth, their tender leaves reaching skyward, while fresh streams carved paths through the land, bringing life to every corner. The animals had worked tirelessly, and their efforts had transformed the forest into a symbol of resilience. Bella, perched in her oak tree, watched the renewed vibrancy below. She marveled at how the community had come together, each creature contributing in its own way. The fox's words echoed in her mind. The ripple begins with a single drop. What had started as small acts of guidance had grown into a movement of unity and purpose. As Bella reflected, she realized that her journey had been as much about her own growth as it was about helping others. The doubts that had once consumed her seemed distant now, replaced by a quiet confidence. She understood that wisdom wasn't a fixed state, but a continuous process, one shaped by courage, mistakes, and the willingness to learn. One evening, as the animals gathered for a celebration under the full moon, Bella descended from her perch to join them. The clearing buzzed with activity, squirrels darting between the trees, rabbits hopping joyfully, and birds singing in harmony. A makeshift stage of logs and moss had been set up, and the animals encouraged Bella to speak. At first she hesitated, her feathers ruffling with nervous energy. But as she looked around, she saw familiar faces: the hedgehog family, the sparrows, the deer, and the young squirrel who had once clung to a branch during the storm. Their expressions were warm and expectant, a reflection of the trust they had placed in her. Bella took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady. "Thank you for teaching me what it truly means to be wise." The crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on her. "When the storm came, I was afraid. I doubted myself and didn't believe I had anything to offer. But in acting, however imperfectly, I discovered something powerful. Wisdom isn't about always having the right answers. It's about listening, learning, and finding the courage to take the first step, even when the path isn't clear." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. "Together, we've rebuilt this forest. Not because any one of us had all the answers, but because we trusted and supported each other. That's the true strength of our community." A wave of applause and cheers erupted from the animals, their joy echoing through the trees. Bella felt a warmth spread through her, a feeling of belonging she had never known before. As the celebration continued, Bella returned to her perch, the stars twinkling above her. The forest hummed with life, and she realized that the journey of transformation was never truly over. Challenges would come again, but Bella knew she was ready to face them. not alone, but with the wisdom of the forest guiding her. From that day forward, Bella became a symbol of courage and learning for the entire forest. Animals from far and wide sought her out, not because she had all the answers, but because she showed them how to find their own. And so, Bella's story spread beyond the forest, a tale of resilience and the power of community. It reminded everyone who heard it that wisdom is not something we are born with, but something we grow into, one act of courage at a time. If you feel misunderstood or unsure of your path, remember, Bella, sometimes the greatest wisdom lies not in knowing everything, but in daring to take the first step.